What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. And we do that by highlighting the practitioners that make this the best field to work in. Now, before we get into this episode, please hit that subscribe button. It helps the show grow and it costs you nothing. In this episode, I sit down with two tactical strength coaches, one that just recently moved into tactical and one that has been working in the field for over 5 years. In this way, you're going to learn what it's like to crack into the field, work your way up the career ladder, and understand how to best serve the athletes that you work with. Additionally, if you just left college and are working in tactical, this practical advice will be able to help you with your first couple days on the job. Or if you're on the fence and you're thinking about going tactical, this might be the episode that helps change whether or not you get in or you decide to stay where you're at. Here at Strength Coach Network, we pride ourselves on giving you the best quality information from strength and conditioning coaches and practitioners that still work with or have worked with athletes. This is not theory. We are always about giving you practical information that you can apply day one the minute you're done listening to this. And you can check us out for a $1 trial in the link down below. Click that link and find out more about us.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Giddy up.
Woo!
Let's go.
So everybody, this is the second attempt at recording this podcast with Katie and Maria. We recorded a full podcast and about 25 minutes of it was recorded. I will put that bonus 25 minutes at the very end of it. If you want to stick around and hear the beginning part of our conversation the last time we talked. But ladies, thank you for being able to come on again.
Of course.
Thanks, Coach. We appreciate it.
I was telling Katie earlier, I was kind of worried we were going to have to start this over. I was like, man, what did I say last time? What do I need to hit on?
What was I wearing last time?
Yeah.
Should I match that?
Yeah.
I think I was on the right side before.
Yeah, no, this will just be a complete brand new episode, and it works out well because I have the same notes, I have the same questions that I sent you all, and anybody that's listening, yes, most of the time we don't have pre-recorded questions, but when we're talking with people that work with our military personnel or several times with professional organizations, we need to submit questions to them so they can submit it to be able to get the green light. So I have those same questions, and then I also have the notes that I took in the middle of the show. So I think this will actually be an even better episode.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Let's go.
Katie or Maria, whoever wants to start first, but path into tactical strength and conditioning. And then Maria, if you could dive into the phrase, she's going to kill us, when you start talking about when you started working in tactical.
My path into tactical, it all started kind of as a distant dream, really. I started in college, I really started in the high school setting when I was about 18, 19, getting into it all together, like trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And then, started with strength and conditioning. I was like, okay, I don't hate this yet, so I need to move up and build my resume. So, going to my mentor, like, hey, help me get somewhere. So I went to Northwest Missouri State and I worked there over the summer. And that was like my path into college. And I was a college athlete myself as well. And again, I kept doing it. I was like, well, I still don't hate this. Like, I'm waking up at 4 a.m. every day and I think I can do this, And then, as I got older and I started working in the college setting, it does really become a grind. And you're like, what is the rest of my career and trajectory going to look like? You hear about this new tactical setting around like 2019, 2020. But there's a lot of questions because it's the military. So how do you get in there? How do you find out about it? We don't really know. I am from Leavenworth, Kansas, like out in the county. And I was very much familiar with base. I have friends that they were dependents, their parents were in the military. So I had been on and off base a lot, throughout high school, college and stuff. And being in the field that I'm in, I was like, wow, it'd be really cool to get to do tactical strength and conditioning, and if they ever had a job here at Fort Leavenworth. The problem was there was no job at all, and there was no H2F even at the time. And so that's why it was kind of a distant dream. So this past year I was at Ottawa University. It was a small NAIA south of Lawrence, and that was close to home for me, so that was nice. I was the assistant director there, kind of turned interim. It was a weird time, but it was good. And then I was like, well, I need to get out of here because I didn't want to get stuck, essentially. I need money as a financial thing. So I was like, well, I need to either go up in a division or try and find something that pays a little bit more. So I was scrambling, it's the summertime and things are finishing out and opportunities are starting to close up. So I'd actually had a few different interviews. I had a job that I thought I was going to take at a Division II that was in the area. It wasn't going to pay a whole lot more, but it was a step up. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take that. I'll live with family. Like we'll make this work for another year. I'll build the resume and then I'll hop around somewhere else afterwards. But I had another interview and it was here with the Army. And I was like, okay, well, we know how the military works. Like everyone had told me, it's going to take forever. They're not going to get back to you in time. But I was like, okay, well, I'm still going to do the interview and we'll just see how it goes. And I was expecting to just take the other job contingently and then continue in the college space. They offered me on the spot whenever I did that interview, and it was substantial and it was close to home. And it was the job that I had like hoped and prayed for. And now I'm living my distant dream. So it was kind of weird. Here I am.
Yeah, and
Now, Katie, your path is slightly different. Go ahead.
yeah, mine is not necessarily, it's weird because mine's not necessarily planned. I kind of fell into it. So my husband's active duty, and I've been a strength coach for a greater part of 10 years now, but I had aspirations of, going into physical therapy and more of the rehab side of things. And it wasn't until I met him that I actually found the H2F program by happenstance. It just I don't know, I applied as a nutrition educator at the time. I'm not a licensed dietitian, period, but I know nutrition things, and they wanted someone who didn't necessarily have to be licensed, but was also CSCS and could just bring a little bit more bang for their buck, so to speak. So I could train folks, and I can also give some tips on nutrition and performance and things like that and how those relate. But I was a GS employee for probably a year. We moved to JBLM in Washington State, and I hopped on the contracting side as a strength coach. And the rest is kind of history at that point, because since my husband's active duty, we PCS every few years. And because H2F is now growing and continuing to grow, there's a job for me, thankfully, at each location we go to, because I am a coach. So it's great being on that side of things, and that just kind of fell into place. It's a God thing more than anything else, but I'm happy to be doing it. I love what I do.
That's something that I want any of our listeners out there. If you are a military spouse, we've had male or female strength coaches where that's the case, and they didn't know, but they learned about it. Like when we talked with them at the CSCCa or during the H2F event that we had virtually, I forget, in June or July. So strength coaches, if that is you, if you are a military spouse, look into it, because there is paperwork to be filled out, correct? TeamBuildr has been my trusted source for online software programs for my athletes since 2019. Since then, they've continued to grow. They have this new practice integration where practice planning can integrate with the sport coach. You have your sports science, your AMS, the questionnaires. They've continued to evolve and keep giving you the things that you need. It has made my life easier as a strength coach. I want the same for you. You do not need to keep printing on lift cards. Please, printing on lift cards in Excel, you don't need to do that. If you need help being able to purchase it, they have a pre-written grant on their website. They're also part owners in the Plyomat with Coach Rich Burnett. So if you need to get a good device that can accurately and validly and quickly get your jump height and ground contact time, so now you can get RSI, Plyomat's a great choice. We utilize that at Goldfinch. Check TeamBuildr. Check them out in the link down below. Please stop printing on lift cards. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make your athlete's life easier. It's easier to program on the back end. Check out TeamBuildr in the link down below.
Yep, there is. And if you definitely, if you're not a strength coach, if you have some other area of expertise that you think is directly related to human performance, especially with holistic health and fitness with the Army, but there are other human performance programs within the military that we need folks like you. We need them because when you're a spouse, you can relate to the soldiers a lot better, because you know full well what they're going through. And the Army especially does a great job, at least I have felt like they have for me, in taking care of spouses, and making sure that we have opportunities for them when they come on board.
Moving down, so we talked about this again before, so the you might have been able to mull on your answers, but what does it mean that TSAC needs tactical strength coaches, not coaches looking to work in the tactical setting and just copy and paste what they did in team sports?
So I touched on this a little bit before, but I'll just say this: what sets tactical coaches apart is that they're integrated. So it's not just a gym coach that we have, right? But they're directly embedded into the unit. Now, while that looks different for us here at Leavenworth, from a broad perspective, at least among tactical spaces, more than likely you are directly with the unit, whether that's military, that's police, that's firemen. You're there within their battalions of sorts, and you're doing the coaching directly within, that's adapting to whatever the mission cycle is, right? And your communication daily is like up and down the chain of command, right? Like, so we're not working with, while they work with me as their lead coach, like what they do as far as programming is an answer to what the battalion brigade leadership wants for them, wants for the soldiers specifically. And they're not waiting around for ideal conditions, right? When you're a coach from a college setting, everything is great and groovy because you're in a gym that has all the equipment you need, lights work, temperature's probably controlled, right? Like you've got what you need. You just need to have the plan to go do it. But here we don't really have that. You don't have that a lot in the tactical spaces. You can't just wait around for those ideal conditions. You've got to be able to make the readiness happen with whatever tools that you have that are available to you. And then just understanding that tactical strength and conditioning is definitely more of a mission aligned role. And it's not something that we're typically planning for your college athletes, right? For your sport athletes. And I'll let Maria touch a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I think going back to that first question, you wanted me to touch on like, oh my gosh, she's going to kill me. That statement. I think that's a big fear with, I think it's others whenever they see, these college coaches are coming into this setting, and they think that, and I touched on this before, like we've worked with the most high level athletes in the college setting. That's not the case. Just because somebody's good at their sport does not mean that they are necessarily high level in the weight room or proficient with movement patterns or explosive or any of these different things. So whenever you tell them like, hey, I was a college strength coach, I've worked at, Division I, Division II NAI schools, they're like, oh my gosh. And you tell them you were a college athlete, they're scared because they think that all of a sudden, like, you don't know how to work with their population. I can't tell you how many times like people would preface with me, now, these are not your college athletes. And I'm like, I get it, but at the same time, like, I wish you could have seen, like, no offense to some of my college kids, but like, I wish you could have seen some of the people that I was working with, like, and everyone has room to grow, and that just goes back to the type of programming that you're doing. Something I didn't touch on last time that I think is important that a lot of people don't realize that we don't deal with in the college setting is the age group difference. In college, you've got 18 to super seniors, gosh, what are they now? Like 24, 25, some of them. Which at that time was like old when you hear somebody tell you that they're 25. You're like, dang, dude, like, get a job. But in the tactical setting, you have everybody from 18 years old up to like, gosh, in their 50s potentially.
It depends on how long they stay in, but like we do directly work with majors and higher ups who are in their early 50s.
Yeah. And so whenever I'm writing these programs, it's like, yes, I've got my young bucks that are like your real go-getters, and you've also got your people that have been in for a really long time that are super huas, like what we would say in here, and like they want to be the go-getters still, but you're like, oh, I don't want them to like hurt themselves, and what we say, like, get on profile. So what am I writing with everybody in mind that I don't have to have, like, there's one of me, there's anywhere from probably 20 to 40 of them at a time, potentially. And so how am I going to write something that is to everybody's capabilities, but still getting something out of it. And then, like Katie said, always changing. And I touched on this before. Your program, just keep it as a guideline. It's probably not going to stick. And you just have to think the goal in tactical versus college. Like we always have in the college setting, game day, right? I want them to be better on the field, on the court, on the mat, whatever it is, the most explosive, the most powerful. I want them to throw harder, hit farther, blah, 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 all this stuff. In tactical, it's how can I keep these people moving? We talked about KPIs and measuring success. We're going to see those numbers directly on the AFT with those events. But at the end of the day, it's helping reducing those profiles and injuries over their entire career. So whenever they do try to get out of the military, they don't have to, they might want it, but like this long, like disability check that they're going to get paid out. Like that's what we were brought on here for, is to save the government millions and millions of dollars, essentially. Instead of people leaving crippled, they're actually like have a healthy lifestyle. So
yeah. And you know what? I just thought of this now. So we train from a college standpoint, we're training the young bucks, as you refer to them, the young athletes, right? We're not training their coaches. Here, it's like we train the coaches and the athletes, right? Because we're also training leadership.
yeah.
So they're following some of those same plans. And to your point about, yes, we have 18-year-olds. We also have late 40s, early 50s. We can't give them the same plan and expect the same outcome, the same results from that plan. So it can be tricky, but that's why we say keep things simple soldier, right? Because getting them to follow basic, fundamental movement patterns is a challenge in itself. So
I think it just comes down to that education piece, especially too. Like, how am I giving them the tools to, and we touched on that last time, like when they get into the gym, are they learning something new than what they knew before than their typical like gym bro split? Are we giving them some actual knowledge,
Yep.
So I reached out to one of my former assistants who was at West Virginia for a while, and then he, similar to you, Maria, went tactical, and I checked in with him this morning and just seeing how he was, and he said, best thing I ever did for myself. I feel super at home in this sector. The timeline for how everything goes was pretty much exactly what you've said on the Strength Coach Network podcasts. And I got a lot of buy-in and support with my battalion with all the collegiate experience before coming in as well. Dasher has completely changed the game for how I'm able to time my athletes, whether I'm doing ACL, max velo, or curvilinear running. Had the blues, had the blacks at Goldfinch. Now that I have the silvers, this has saved me so much time in setup, breakdown if I'm going from Ankeny to Huxley, or from Ankeny to the Nevada location, or Nevada to Huxley, like wherever I got to go time athletes. It has made my ability to go from one place to another so much easier with the silvers. Strength coaches that have to go from one field to the other, or from the field to the court, this will help you save time. Now, in the spirit of saving time, you also have the ability to have an API interaction with TeamBuildr, so now you can see all the data on the back end. Seeing data on the back end, Dasher has a free app, a player profile app, that will allow athletes to see their data. Over 6,000 coaches and athletes have done so. And if you want more than just the timing gates, if you check them out in the link down below, they have solutions to help you out with vertical jump, broad jump, RSI, all that. Check them out in the link down below. I guess I don't really have a question there. It's just more of like a, hey, this, like, so anybody listening to it that's kind of thinking it, like there are those ways to continue to come into it, like Maria said, and Carson talking to there, like, it's just continue to think about it and understand, be able to, generate that buy-in.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And if you have some sense of understanding, like, you have to manage your expectations with everything, right? Like, so when you come into a tactical space, especially from college, do not be surprised by the cultural shock you are going to receive. Like, it is real, it will happen, and you may not love it. Most college coaches don't love it from the beginning, but they learn to embrace it and find that it indeed is their calling, and they do find themselves becoming comfortable with it, and embracing the new challenge that comes. So
we know we kind of touched on this again last time too, but for anybody that is interested and they're scared to take the leap because they don't really know what to expect, and it's different and it's going to be too slow paced because my friend got into it and he just doesn't like it because the population. I'm sorry, but I think that that's a poor mindset going into it, and that's it. That's what I said last time. I think it has to do with you and your character. Like, what are you going to do if you get to another school? And maybe, you go to NAIA level school and it's not that high level and it's the same difference. One of my former, what would you say, mentor, I guess, that I worked with when I was at Arkansas State, it's the book, but the big time is where you're at, and your circumstances are what you make it. So it doesn't matter whether you're in college or you're in tactical or if you're in the private sector or high school even, I work with kids outside of this as well, and they're 10 years old. Does that mean that it sucks because their level is not to what I'm used to? No. I think that your goal has to change though. It's like what Katie said.
Yeah, you got to be adaptable. Yeah. Got to be willing to adapt.
So it's about who you are more than anything.
And you had both on the prior episode, I don't know if it came through for everybody or if that part got edited out, but you both said there's opportunities to do more, to do leadership style stuff. Like if you're that type of person that wants to make a difference and wants to get things done, you can do that. You can go find, things to do during that quote unquote slower pace wherever you're at. Yeah.
Katie kind of told this to all of our staff whenever we first got here, because a lot of most of us were coming from a different environment, and and she basically said, like, you can make your schedule as filled or as not filled as you desire outside of like what your duties are, but also like careful what you wish for type of thing, because you don't want to turn into that personal trainer. But like with the team stuff, if you want more high speed stuff, like that's something I've had experience with in my short time here, is training up those groups that are going off to these week-long competitions, and you've got 7 weeks and you're with them the whole entire time, sometimes training them twice a day. Because what you don't realize is when they have these types of competitions, a lot of these soldiers are literally being pulled from their schedule, and the Army is paying them 7 days a week to only train for that. So you get a really cool opportunity, like as a coach, to see what you're capable of. And that's when you can start implementing some of those different modalities that you wouldn't do whenever you're with those larger groups.
Yeah, 100%. If you're a go-getter and you can make things happen, just by building some rapport with folks, like simple relationships, right? Having a conversation, and like with the Army, everything they do is data-driven, right? So if you can prove like what you're doing can make a difference, even to just the lowest level of leadership, right? And then you work your way up into like some middle management, right? And then you get to your bigwigs. If they see that, just the simplest thing, like they're bought in, they're ready to go. But you do have to be careful what you take on for yourself. Not that the job can really be difficult, but you can overcommit yourself too. Like it's also easy to do that, but that's why there's a team of us, right? And building our coaching staff even more will help even more. And we're here to serve the soldiers. So if that means we're here at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m., we're here. And that's part of the challenge as well when you're talking about the differences between college and tactical spaces. Like, I know in college spaces you do work long hours, but here it's not consistent. So there might be a long day. There might be a shorter day. It just depends on the battle rhythm of what's happening.
You both had talked before where the KPIs weren't necessarily about max output, right? It's more about durability for the soldier. I think, Katie, you were the one that talked about that before. Explain that in further detail for any of our strength coaches. It's like, wait a minute, durability over output. Like, what does that mean? Why is that more important in TSAC?
Sure. I mean, so a big part of like our mission set is longevity, right? So we are here to train soldiers that can sustain long-term, because that improves the lethality of our force, of our military force, which is, all listeners should want, right? And that's when we talk about, just kind of measuring success in the tactical space, right, it looks very different than sport performance, because it's not always about those personal records or aesthetics, but it is about readiness and resilience. And so for us, or at least for me anyways, I look to measure that kind of around like three main pillars, right? Which is individual outcomes. Yes, they're great. How do those individual outcomes impact the unit itself? And that can be from a level of, as low as squad, platoon, company, battalion, brigade, so on and so forth. And then how is the team integrating, like our H2F team integrating with those soldiers? So at the soldier level, success means kind of improving that movement quality, right? We're talking about durability. So improving movement quality, reducing injury risk, and increasing their work capacity, especially under load. So, how well does that soldier move? How consistently do they show up, right, to any of our training sessions that we have? How do they progress through return to duty protocols, very similar to your return to sport protocols? How do they perform in their job specific tasks? So when you compare that to your sport, your college athletes, like how well are our soldiers actually performing in what their MOS is? So their occupational specialty, right? For us, we work with a lot of MPs. So can they move from low ground to high ground? Can they move from a kneeling position to a standing position effectively? Can they stand behind a shield and not be tackled over within, a couple of seconds, right? Can they be able to sprint from point A to point B and not pass out before they get there? Can they do that multiple times? Like, those are things that we have to, when we sit down and we program, we have to determine, programming that aligns with what they currently do, because that's different across the board, across all the big Army. And then tools like their AFT performance, right, which we get that data at least twice a year. And then their profile data, if they've been injured, how often, how many times, or, no injuries. That's kind of how we determine, what our programming looks like and how effective that is.
Hawkin Dynamics is my preferred choice for force plates and for handheld dynamometers. Made in the USA up in Maine, I have been using them since 2020 when I was at Towson University. Still use them at Goldfinch today, and I've brought the plates to the high school that I've trained at. We will use the plates and transport them when we train athletes at the many different high schools that we currently work at. As I said, they are a handheld dynamometer as well with the true strength. You can assess athlete internal, external rotation, hip, AB, adduction, calf strength, hip, whatever you want to assess, you can do with the true strength. It also has the ability to pair with the difference striking machine. So now you can see single strike, multiple strike. Check out Hawkin Dynamics down in the link down below.
I'd say outside of that as well too, when I first started this job, it's daunting because you have all of your principles, you have your programming style that you do, but you're used to working with athletes. So now you're panicked and you're like, oh, what do I do? Because you don't want to screw it up and you've got all these different ideas. So I took to the internet, as one would, and I'm looking up podcasts and tactical things. And I want to say it was Vernon Griffiths. He's one of really big tactical strength coach, has some great info. But basically put it in this podcast very simply in the fact that these soldiers, when you give them stuff to do apart from an athlete, the athlete will go home, recover, maybe they have training table, or they can go to the athletic trainers afterwards, they can recover. If you bury your soldiers, like I told you last time, they're either coming off of an 8 to 12 hour shift, or they're about to go into an 8 to 12 hour shift. And then some of them live in the barracks, or some of them have a family of 1 to 4 or 10 kids or whatever at home that they've got to go take care of and run to practice. And, so this kind of like goes into like the durability aspect, and your goals change. Like, I don't care what your squat number is, do I want you to get stronger? Yes. Will that help with the buy-in? But are you being consistent? When they're coming up to you and being like, wow, I feel a little bit better than I used to, and it goes back to that education piece again. Like, I'm understanding like what we're doing. Like, I've never worked out like this before. I really like it. That's the win. That's what it's really about, and that's the buy-in. So that's the durability aspect, and that's how you see the success.
Do you think most strength coaches just don't think that way about like, oh, it's, is it because we're in a vacuum? Like, yeah, everybody just trains this way. Our algorithm sends us people and seeing things of them training that way. So they just think, hey, everybody in the world trains this way instead of having those different types of splits or whatnot.
I've been saying this. I think that a lot of social media is a big thing now, obviously. Your parents were right. Like, it's those dang phones. But I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in strength and conditioning now. And that's whenever you kind of can go back to the KISS principle of like the basics, your ground-based movements, like the fundamentals work. But now it's like competing of like what Joe Schmo does and like what they posted. Like, yes, that works too. Like, yes, all these modalities are really cool. But you don't have to do the cool stuff to get the same results, but I think that can really play into a lot of it. So I think coming into this field, that's where a lot of people get scared. I think in strength and conditioning, especially from the college setting, they're like, I'm going to lose all of my knowledge. Like, I didn't lose my knowledge. Has it become simplified maybe because I'm not using like velocity-based training every single day? Sure, I'm not using it, but I still understand like how to practically apply it. If we had force plates, like, yeah, we can still use it, but it's not necessary. It becomes too flashy sometimes, I think. So
yeah, I'd say gimmicky. Like, I mean, like the force plates, the VO2 max, like, I mean, all of that stuff is really cool to have. And from our point of view, like, if we appreciate the science behind it and we're like, oh yeah, we can improve this by these numbers here, let's adjust the training plan. We just can't do that here. Like, not for everyone anyways. I mean, if you have your special populations, those that are going to, I don't know, they're going to special forces, they're going to Ranger, they're making those transitions. Those are your 1%ers realistically, that we at least here would work with. And being comfortable doing the simple things is very hard for a lot of folks to do. And if you're competitive in nature and you always want the next big thing, like, you'll struggle. Like, you will struggle in a tactical space because you'll realize you don't need all that stuff. So being able to appreciate the simple knowledge that you have while still building upon it, right? Continuing education is important, but being able to translate that in a way that explains it to soldiers so they can understand the reasoning why we do what we do, and how that impacts their longevity. I think that's important.
I did want to add this caveat that I didn't last time. This job has a ton of flexibility. We talk about how it is pretty simple in our day-to-day, but if we want to talk like schedule-wise, a lot of coaches are fearful of like, I'm going to become a worse coach. I'm not going to get to be able to work with those athletes again. I do more now than I could when I was in the college space. Like, all I could do was college because that was from wake up to go to sleep and then repeat again. If I wanted to, give softball lessons on the side, or if I wanted to, coach these 10 to 12-year-olds twice a week, if I wanted to go and fill in at the college nearby, like, you would have so much ability and flexibility to do so, given your supervisor and stuff and coordinating with that. But I don't think that you have to sacrifice in this field. And we see that with a lot of different people. It actually gives you more opportunity to still, like, what would you say, like, dabble in all of the different things. If that was something you were concerned about, there's always that opportunity.
Yep.
Flipping that on its head, and this was not a question that I had written down, but and if you don't know the answer to it, I have no idea. If anybody was in college and they had some flexibility and they're like, well, hey, I'm near Leavenworth, can I go and intern with you all 1 or 2 days a week? Can I go and help you all out? Or just because of the military aspect of it, it's like, X-nay on the oops-nay?
Absolutely not. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, it's a great question. So our contractor, as well as I'm sure other contractors out there, are creating a system to be able to do that for those who really they just aspire to be strength coaches. They don't necessarily have to aspire to be tactical coaches, but we do provide internship opportunities while they are.
Powerlift has been my choice for strength and conditioning equipment ever since I got into the field. Right now, I still have their racks, I have their barbells, I have their bumpers, specialty bars, and we have the IMTP device at Goldfinch, and it's been great for us because it's allowed us to free up the rack where we used to have to do the IMTPs. Now we use that IMTP device, roll it around, we've created more space. You have to check them out. Doesn't matter if in your college, high school, pro, tactical, or private, they have the ability to make whatever customizations and whatever adjustments you need. I was a part of the weight room that was the 32 brand new rack facility at Iowa football. You see what they did for TCU football. Doesn't matter how big, how small, whatever your customizations are, Powerlift is number one in the exercise equipment space for a reason. Check them out in the link down below.
In school, if it's a capstone piece, whatever the case may be, yep, you can come.
Yes.
Yep, you're looking at your education and you're trying to apply some of that knowledge right now with a coach who's doing it right now, right? Because I would argue that the best way we all learn is with on-the-job training, right? So you can be very book smart, but not know how to apply any of that. And that's an opportunity to come work with us. Then you also get a feel for this is what the day-to-day looks like. Because the problem that I think we run into when coaches make that change is that they get into it and then they're like, not for me. And now the turnover rate has increased more than we would like. So what we want, yes, is to provide an opportunity to bring some interns in, and then, you get a feel for it. You get to see what the day-to-day is like. You get to see what we do, and then we take it a step further, right? You go get your CSCS, keep building that relationship with us or wherever you are, making those contacts, networking, attend TSAC, like that's a great way to do that. And then you've just drastically increased your opportunity for jobs. And because H2F's continuing to grow almost wherever you want to go, whether it's CONUS or OCONUS, just because the program is ever evolving. So
that just means in the United States and outside of the United States for all the acronyms.
I knew that. I knew that, but I actually had wrote down earlier, I was like, acronyms. How hard was it to learn all of them?
I can also give another little blurb of somebody who came from the outside in. If you wanted some more information, because people are probably like, oh, that's awesome, I can go and do that, but how the heck do I reach out to somebody to figure out how to do so? Because for us, we're a contractor, so what are they going to email our contracting company and then try and get down the pipeline? Good luck, But an easy thing that you could do, if you wanted to go through a college campus, potentially, for us, we're near a lot of different college campuses, and most of those have ROTC programs. And in some way, shape, or form, I can speak to this because I was a part of one whenever I was in college. A lot of that cadre and stuff, they're tied to this base, that's their day job, but then they do a little of that ROTC stuff. So they could know people in the area that could maybe find out some info for you. If you're just near a college campus, I could say you could reach out to that. But then also, we're just one aspect of tactical, is what Katie's been saying. Mm-hmm. There's Air Force, there's the Marines, there's GS positions, Katie started out as GS versus contracting. Look everywhere, USA Jobs, they're gonna have different positions. They're all different.
Yep.
Let's see. Where do you then see? Okay, we're kind of talking about it. Then, where do you see tactical strength and conditioning heading in the next 5 to 10 years? We kind of have been saying that there can be the growth, and I've heard people talking about the Air National Guard starting to be added, and more police and firefighters. Where do you two, as two practicing strength coaches, see it going?
So for me, I think it's gonna continue evolving from just a support function into a fully integrated, mission critical component of operational readiness. H2F is a great example, but there are other human performance programs within the military, like operational support teams are with the Air Force right now. But they're going to mature and they're going to expand across the force, because the reality is that, the leaders of today's military, I say military as a whole, not just the Army, but they care about retaining service members, because obviously recruitments have been so low in recent years. But in order to do that, you've got to be able to provide programs. I say that programs is just like not the best word to use, because the Army looks at programs like, oh, it's just another program. But you've got to provide resources, right? You got to provide support teams to be able to help these service members sustain their time in, because they do fall under a lot of stresses that we coaches know nothing about. And I might know a little bit more just because my spouse has lived it. But if you're coming in without any kind of connection to it, you don't know what they really go through. And in order to provide some of these, support programs for them to help understand some of that and to help be able to provide for them, so that we are a critical piece, right? We're integral to the operational effectiveness, right? And their readiness to be able to sustain that long term. Like, I think that's going to continue to grow. I think it's going to continue to evolve. I think every post, every unit is going to have some sort of support, whether that's folks who are, directly embedded within that unit, or if you're kind of like us, where we support the installation as a whole right now, because we're the only team here. Leavenworth's not that big, but I think the Army specifically is going to recognize, okay, we have 5,000 to 7,000, whatever it is, within a brigade. But we've got these 500 who are not being supported because they don't belong to that brigade. So you're going to have, some of your area support teams come in to make sure that we're taking care of everyone. And then I expect that probably, we in the tactical space, whether we're ready for it or not, that we will use more of like the wearable technology. So we will probably get into using force plates. We'll get into using any kind of other readiness monitoring tools. I know I've got friends who are using the Oura rings now. They're just so gung-ho over it. And you can have your opinions of, what's reliable data, what's not. We can compare apples to apples if we really want to. But I think that because the Army itself and the military is so data-driven, they're going to want some of those things to be included. But that's going to take a lot of trial and error on us, probably using different coaching platforms, different devices, and actually seeing if we can measure readiness as a whole of our soldiers, especially, and if that's going to impact, whether or not they're more deployable in the long run.
I think for growth, I can't speak on it quite as much. I would say I'm a pretty hopeful person. I don't think that we're going anywhere. I think even in the general setting of overall, like, health and wellness for any individual, we know that we're necessary. It's just how are we convincing other people? I think that obviously that's where the data comes in. But if we want to talk about just expansion of...
Vacations are meant for you to be outside doing things that you love and reconnecting with your family and your friends and recharging your battery. It is not meant for you to travel and listen to some coach talk in a conference hall and eat some food that you know really isn't the best thing that you want to be eating. Take back your vacations and do so with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. When you purchase an annual membership, you're going to get access to our course, Performance Coaching 101. In the subsequent years, it'll renew and you'll get access to 102 and 103. Each year, you're going to get access to 2 NSCA CEUs and 10 CSCCa CEUs. These CEUs will allow you to be able to learn from the comfort of your office. You'll be able to earn CEUs on your time rather than having to travel. Take back your vacation and be able to do this with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. Click the link down below for more information.
Tactical strength and conditioning as a whole. I didn't have a job. This wasn't a position, like 6 months ago, and now I have a job here at this base. So that's just living proof of its continued growth and it's spreading, like you talked about, it's talking about spreading to whether it's reserve, guard, all these different smaller installations and institutions. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think from a coaching standpoint, like if you look, if you're a college coach that's listening now, if you look at like what your career pathway looks like, how flat does it look? Right? I mean, and I'm not trying to speak negatively of like college coaches, but like either you deal with some sort of flat career pathway or you deal with a short contract cycle. At times we could deal with that, but I think 5 to 10 years from now, as we continue to essentially prove our worth, like how valuable we are, you're going to see more structured career ladders, right? You're going to see like credential standards increase, and even like internal like military performance roles, I think are going to be filled by trained professionals like ourselves, which I think is how you help retain talent and build that sustainable pipeline of experienced coaches, which is what we want and we argue for on a regular basis.
I couldn't agree more. And I've kind of gotten some flack from other strength coaches that are like, oh, you paint this image of Tactical as this oasis. And I talked back to them. I said, I actually never said that. I am passionate about this because if I was entering the field, like this would be the route that I would take for those reasons that you just said. It's growing. There's that ability to have the 4 Ps that we talk about at length at Strength Coach Network, but there's the ability for jobs to be lost in college or professional. 2 specific examples happened. A friend of mine, the organization he worked for sold it to a new owner who then decided that person's position as a strength coach was no longer required. Graduate assistant strength coaches at a university and low-level assistants with budget cuts. The budget, instead of them taking less money, people in administration, they're just cutting these lower-level positions. So there's no such thing as a perfect job. There's always risks and rewards, blah, blah, blah. I am just talking about it because if it was a young me, that's why I would be doing it and pursuing it.
I think it's completely fair. I think I'm 25, I didn't know where I was going to go. I don't know like what the future holds. I can assume and hope that it would continue to be in this, and continue to grow, like Katie said, like, cause at least I know I can have a little bit more trajectory. But in the college setting, it was always like, okay, just keep hopping to the next one until you're not completely poor, essentially. And that's sad, but like that's it's the literal reality of it. And hopefully I can find something that's close enough to, your friends, family, or loved ones. But I think there's just so much ego just tied to like walking around at the conferences with, with your polo on with which school you work for. And, because when you walk out into the street, and I was literally just talking with Katie about this before we got on the podcast, when you walk into a room, like whether it's with your family or anyone you don't know, and they ask what you do and you're like, oh, I'm a college strength coach. They're like, that is so cool. And it is, but it's like, I'm poor. Like, is it cool? Because I can't use those benefits that they offer me because I can't pay for them. Like, I really hope my car doesn't break down. Like, so cool. Like, yes, the people are cool, and I think everything serves its purpose for the time being. And back to like, the big time is where you're at. I'm super grateful for my experiences, but man,
it's cool when you don't have any other responsibilities that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
I mean, like everybody, you gotta have a stepping stone. So don't be afraid of that either. Like, don't think you can just jump right into something, but because those stepping stones, as you said, serve their purpose, but don't sit in them forever. Like, understand that you have to move on. You have to develop, and finding opportunities to do that, whether that's jumping into a different environment, into a new space like Tactical, may be beneficial for you, even if you choose to go back to college or you choose to do something different. I know we lose a lot of coaches to corporate wellness because guess what? Corporate wellness is going to pay the big bucks and they're going to provide the best benefits probably for you. And if you're supporting more than yourself, you're supporting a family, it's hard to argue that. But I think if you find ways to get the right experience and to make the connections with people and put some effort into it, At least I've found, I won't speak for you, Maria, but I found that this space is a lot more enjoyable. And you understand kind of the impact of what you do long term rather than just for a specific time. So
I think, in the college setting, we get really attached to the kids. Like, we love going to their games, like whether or at practice, like you're on the team. Like, you're not just the support staff, like you're part of each team that you work with. And I understand that connection. One thing I had to really realize though is, like when I was at Ottawa, I loved it there and I loved the kids, and it was like, should I leave even though, I'm not making that much? Like, do I do what's better for myself here, or do I stay here for these kids? If I would have stayed, most of the individuals that like I loved so deeply, like they're gone. Like they either graduated or quite frankly, like they transferred themselves. So it's always going to change. So you can't base that off of that. And then, from a financial perspective too, again, bring it back to that. We as strength coaches complain all the time about money. And especially in the college setting, we're like, they're not paying. Well, then why do we keep staying? Because they're not gonna pay anymore if we keep staying. Like, holy cow, get out and show them that you really need them, and then they'll start raising the money. Same thing with tactical. If we keep losing everybody to overturn, guess they're gonna start paying more. They will, but not if everyone's like, oh, it's just how it is.
You gotta know your worth too, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Vitruve has been my choice for VBT for years now, not only because of the encoder and how well it works with the app, and you can film movements with the camera and get live variable feedback in real time if you so choose to on the app, but the fact of the amount of content they have been pushing out to help coaches better understand VBT. It's not only just to move the bar faster. You can be working on what's the appropriate load for high rep sets based off velocity loss. You can be looking at velocity loss threshold between sets, in between reps. VBT is not just moving the bar fast. It's moving the bar fast with heavy weights. It's not just moving lightweight fast. And Vitruve has been at the forefront educating coaches on VBT and how to do it the right way. Check them out in the link down below. What's one lesson from each of your career that you would want anybody that's listening right now to remember? And maybe it's one or two or a handful of things that you'd want anybody listening right now to remember.
From my experience, your ability to build trust will matter more than your ability to build a program. Like, from a tactical standpoint and beyond. I've built decent programs. At least I thought they were decent. They worked for me, right? But they worked for some people. I thought they were great programs, but if I haven't built that trust with that person, they do not care at all about what the program is that I provide. It's like the old saying goes, like, nobody cares about what you know until they know you care. And that's part of building that trust. So in this space, like, you can have the most evidence-based training plan in the world. But if they don't trust you, if the soldiers don't trust you, it's not going to stick. Like, that's just the truth about it. And in this environment, relationships essentially drive those results that you're looking for. So until the soldiers know that you're there for them, and you're not worried about your ego or the science or what your resume says, like, they don't need to know any of that stuff. They just need to know that, like, you care about their progress and you're willing to do what it takes to get them to where they need to be. And that'll serve you well moving forward.
I'd say my thing would be, you're exactly where you're supposed to be in each season for a reason. Serve where you're called and be where your feet are, and then be the person to others that those in your life have been to you. I think is the biggest thing.
Last question to respect your time. What is one thing that people don't know about you that you want anybody listening now to know about you in this opportunity to shed light on it?
Do you want me to go first?
Go for it, Maria.
My faith is like the most important thing to me in my life. So that pretty much guides all of my decisions. I'm obviously not perfect, but I would say that my entire story in my career up to this point really has no other explanation except to point to Christ. Like I said, having this job, I'm literally living in answered prayer, but even back to, like, my first job that I got working with a high school, it was because I transferred schools my junior year and I did powerlifting, and then they offered me a job paid at 18 to coach. And they asked me if I had ever coached before, and you just kind of lie through your teeth and you're like, absolutely, heck yeah, I have. And they were like, okay, well, you can start this summer. Perfect, and then another high school finds out, what are you doing there, Howard? Like, why are you at our rival school? And I was like, well, because you didn't offer me a job. And then they're like, well, you're going to work for us next summer. So I just kept getting all of these opportunities that, like, I had never applied for them. And it's like, holy cow, like, God, like, why are you putting me in this field? Like, I want to go somewhere in the medical field. Like, I don't want to do this, And then literally every opportunity, I was super worried about grad school, for instance. This is one. I had nothing lined up for grad school. I knew I was going to do my internship at KU over the summertime. I joined ROTC because I was going to go into the military, because God forbid, I take out a loan for school. And so I did ROTC, and I was all lined up and set up to continue doing that for grad school to pay for stuff. And I got a phone call from Jeff Jones one day, like, God bless that man. And Maria, I got a GA spot, free housing, tuition, stipend, meal plan. I hung up the phone, started crying. And I was like, the heck, God, what the heck? Yeah, did not continue ROTC. Okay. Not in the Army. But it's funny how everything, has worked out up to this point, because whenever I'm even getting the interview for this job, they were like, oh, your experience with this population is super helpful that you have that. And it's like how everything has worked out and lined up. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. And I didn't say this last time, but I would add to that, don't ever say that you're not going to do something. Don't ever, as far as for me, on a personal note, I said I'd never work with the military. I grew up in North Carolina. I grew up around Fort Bragg, and I was like, no, it ain't for me. I'm not doing it. I have a military family, and they're all great and wonderful, but that was just not, the lifestyle was very intimidating for me. And, I also said I'd never date military. And guess what? Married the man of my dreams, and he is doing great things. And here we are, and I'm working in a tactical space, and I quite frankly couldn't imagine doing anything different. But, one thing I just want people to know is that for me, a lot of my best growth came from, early failures in my career. So, it's easy to look at those who are in leadership roles and think or assume it's, a straight path. It's often not. Everybody has to go through their own trials, and as long as you're willing to continue to work to better yourself and better the team around you, you'll succeed, and you'll find your successes, and you'll find your way as far as finding something that you enjoy and you feel connected to, because I think that's what matters in the long run.
Amen. I'm going to be actually titling this podcast is going to be TSAC, Leave It Better Than You Found It. So that's kind of a perfect place to wrap it up based off of what you two had just said.
Are we good?
Yeah, you can quickly introduce yourself, and then Katie can go right afterwards and introduce herself. And like you said, yours super quick. Hey, you were in college, now you're in tactical. Katie can elaborate on her situation as well.
Yeah, Maria Howard.
Maria, if you want to move it to I think if you move the camera, it's currently a little bit more you. I think it's my left, maybe your right. There you go.
Move the camera?
No, you're good now. You were both, it wasn't both of you in the middle of it. Now it is both of you. There you
go. Okay. Well, my name is Maria. I'm from Kansas. I'm still here in Kansas. I work at Fort Leavenworth. Now in the tactical setting, just got out of college. Hi, I'm Katie.
And Katie, you've been there longer. Yep.
Yeah, so I've been a part of the tactical space for about 5 years. I just recently moved to Fort Leavenworth. My husband's active duty. It's kind of how I got into the space. I've been part of strength and conditioning field for the last, about 10 or 11 years now.
And I've sent you both these questions, so I'm going to jump right into number 2, identity in the field. A fellow strength coach who I had on the show about a month ago talked about we need more tactical strength coaches, not strength coaches looking to work in tactical. What does this mean to each of you with both of your different experiences and how long and how recently you've been in tactical?
You want to go first,
Sure.
Katie?
Yeah, so to me, that phrase kind of speaks to more of like a fundamental distinction in mindset, approach, and like mission alignment. So truly getting after the heart of what makes the tactical environment unique. Tactical strength and conditioning isn't just about applying traditional performance models in a new setting. It's about understanding that everything we do is in direct support of mission readiness, soldier lethality, and long-term operational effectiveness. So a tactical strength and conditioning coach isn't just trying to improve someone's squat or deadlift. All great things, but they're building more durable, resilient soldiers who can carry heavy loads, recover under stress, and perform in unpredictable environments. So that requires more than technical knowledge. It demands a bit more of a deep understanding of military culture. That's important. Operations tempo, and the realities of training in austere or resource-limited settings, kind of like the program that we currently serve in. And what sets tactical coaches apart is that they're integrated, right? So they're not just into the gym space, but they're directly into the unit. They're embedded with the unit. So they adapt their programming to the mission cycle. They communicate effectively up and down the chain of command, and they work together with physical therapists, athletic trainers, dietitians, and behavioral health, all to achieve a common goal. So they're not waiting for those ideal conditions, right? They're making readiness happen with whatever tools that they have that's available.
Good.
Yeah. For me, I like this question. I think especially coming from the college scene, and I'm glad Katie said what she said. I think for me, aside from like the actual day-to-day of how the job looks different, I think it's a fair statement to say, but I think that it more so goes to what your motives are versus the title of your job that you have. Versus I'm a college coach, I'm a TSAC, strength and conditioning coach. I think if you're only getting into the field for what it can offer you and serve yourself financially, then you're not going to be happy. It doesn't matter how much money you're making. I do understand finances are a really big thing, though. Obviously, coming from the college setting, we know how that goes. But ultimately, you have to care about the population that you're working with or that you're serving, or you're never going to be able to make an impact or make the change that's needed in the space. You're simply just going to clock in and clock out. And I think that's a really easy thing to do. It's a really big problem that's seen a lot in the tactical space right now. It's a very cush job. It allows for complacency if you're okay with that. But I think that that's where the character comes into play and that you can't be satisfied with the bare minimum. So I wrote some notes basically to talk about some things I wanted to hit on. Some mentors that I had when I was at Arkansas State, they really taught me the value of leaving a place better than you found it. And that's just stuck with me for every single place that I've gone since then. Those individuals not only told me that, but they emulated that for me. And that's what's made me want to be the way that I am. And I think coming from that college setting now into the tactical, I've seen that complacency and how you could easily take advantage of the system that's here in place. You get your set 40 hours, you're getting paid well, clock in, clock out. It's easy. But these soldiers need you, like they're lost. Some of them, they just need hope. And yes, the performance matters, but more than anything, like I think you see the real value of relationships here in this setting, as well as you would in college too. It's a slower paced environment, different training atmosphere than college, obviously. But this does mean that now, since I've worked in both fields, that I'm no longer, it wouldn't mean that I'm no longer just a college coach that I once was. Did I lose my knowledge? Did I lose my skills? If tomorrow I hopped right back into college, am I no longer a tactical strength and conditioning coach, So I think that we have to really start to ask ourselves those questions. I personally think I would have a problem with the identity needing to be so specific in the field for either or of them. I think that it all has to do with the intentions, and that we can hope that for each individual that comes into TSAC, that they'll be here to stay. But as for me, obviously God directs my steps and where I'm at. So we don't know where individuals are going to end up if they're going to stay. We can just hope that while they are here, that they will leave a place better than they found it.
Something that came to my mind when you were talking, and it wasn't on the list, was something a TSAC strength coach working with firefighters talked about was it might be a stepping stone to you. If it is, first of all, you might want to reconsider that. But then he also said, definitely don't like that can't be your modus operandi. You can't say that because for them and the firefighter culture, they're there forever. And like, I guess my question is kind of off the script are you sensing that same thing, both of you, in the tactical world, where if people notice it, then they're just going to completely ignore you? You're not going to get any buy-in because they can just instantly see that you're phony and you're not leaving tactical strength conditioning better than you found it.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, like you just hit on part of the struggle that we have when we try to gain that buy-in. We work with soldiers specifically, but you can relate that to soldiers, you can relate it to airmen, you can relate it to firefighters, police officers, so on and so forth. Their job is, in a sense, permanent, right? We all know we can change careers at any point in time, but when we work with soldiers, our expectation is that they're there for 20 years. Their expectation for us, you're here today, potentially gone tomorrow. Yes, we know you're contracted. We know what that looks like. They don't necessarily know that it's a stepping stone for us unless we advertise that. So I think that's part of what's important about trying to gain that buy-in is that you're not necessarily sharing so much into your personal career track, right? But you're letting them know that you're there for them, however long that may be. So I'm hired to do a job day in and day out. Is my job my identity? Not necessarily, but my goal is to support you and your readiness for however long you are here for, regardless of however long I am. So everyone needs some sort of career progression. We all kind of know and recognize that. But for us, when we talk about developing in the tactical space, at least what I kind of tell my team, and I hope they understand, is that, those developments are going to happen. Those career progressions are going to happen. If you want to pursue more leadership roles, if you want to pursue a different environment, we can talk about that. But the reality is you're here for the soldier because our job is to make sure that our soldiers are more lethal long term. Not just for today, not just for tomorrow. We want them to be able to, sustain their longevity in their career and in their lives long after. So if we adopt that mindset of, while it may be a stepping stone, but what we do is going to matter far beyond that, far beyond what we do just now. It's going to matter long term. Then I think we're more successful as coaches in this space.
I think you pretty much nailed that on the head.
Let's talk daily demands then. Maria, you talked about the fact that it's a slower pace. Katie, why don't you lead us off with, what it looks like? And again, everybody respect the fact that as we're talking about this, we're doing everything from a high level, especially with anybody in the tactical space that we've talked, or our professional teams, just to make sure that we're handling, we're not talking ins and outs of how they but just giving people a 10,000 foot view. And then if you are interested in going tactical after this, being able to reach out to them on their socials and whatnot. But again, just from a 10,000 foot view, daily demands and the differences from tactical to most team sport athletes.
Sure. So my role is a little bit different just from, a lead coach standpoint. So when you try to relate that to more college or sport athletics, right, you have a lead coach, you've got, a head director, performance director, whatever it might be, that's kind of doing more of the administrative side of things. And then you have your line coaches, which is kind of what we refer to our coaches here. But a lot of the day-to-day demands, depending on the program you're involved in, depending on the unit you're involved in, your day could start at 5 a.m. or your day could essentially start at 10 a.m. for training sessions, right? So for us, most of our days fall somewhere with, between 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. as far as our actual day of duties. But a lot of it starts with communication as far as checking in with your coaching team, right? Checking in with other members of your human performance team. So for us, that's H2F, that's holistic health and fitness, right? So that's, if you relate that to college sports, maybe that's checking in with some of your athletic trainers or your physical therapists if you have them on staff, if you have dietitians, so on and so forth. A lot of that's the same for us. We also check in with key unit leadership. So understanding that what we're doing is aligning with their priorities. And that's, maybe that's receiving a little bit of feedback on the training session and how it's going or how it's been going over the course of, whatever cycle we're on. If it's a 6, 8, 12-week cycle, whatever it might be. We might review any kind of training data we have. So upcoming mission requirements or injuries that are affecting our groups as a whole. And then from there, it's usually, yes, our days consist of, a mix of coaching, mentoring staff, and ensuring programming is both effective and adaptable to the unit's operational tempo, which, again, is very different across the board depending on where you are. And when I say that, I'm talking specifically of, what installation you're at. So if you're at an installation that's more infantry based, like your tempo is going to look very different. If you're with folks who are more on staff, or they're, maybe they're engineers, or maybe they are firefighters, maybe they are MPs, like military police, so on and so forth. Like, your schedule is very much dictated by theirs, and that's, you kind of meet them where they're at most days.
She wears a lot of hats, if you couldn't tell. She does a lot of different things.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Mine's a little bit different, obviously, as being like that line coach or just your day-to-day strength coach here. Obviously, I'd say like a bigger culture shock coming to this environment. You always hear, you get to the unit that you're starting to work with, and it's kind of what we call embedment, where it's a little bit different here at Fort Leavenworth. Can you hear me? Is it cutting out?
I got you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's a little bit different here with how things work. I'm going to let Katie explain that more later on. But basically, they find out you were a college coach, and they're like, oh, no. Like, they are terrified. They're like, she's going to kill us, And it's like, no, they don't understand. Like, you would get this. Most of the athletes that we work with in college, they're not that proficient in the weight room either. So I wasn't that shocked with what I saw whenever I did begin working with this population, because as we know, like, most individuals are pretty much gem pop, and you've got your special cases here and there that are pretty athletic, but same thing here. And so I would say from a programming standpoint, you keep things pretty general, but then at the same time too, like, you sit there and you're like, well, am I going to pull my hair out because I'm always changing my plan, or am I just going to understand that that's how this environment goes, and they're pretty much never going to stick to a consistent program, and it's fine, because you truly kind of get to the point of like, something is better than nothing, especially with this population. And I would say more specifically here at Fort Leavenworth versus, your Braggs or your more high speed, like, I hope nobody from Fort Leavenworth listens, but like your more high speed bases, the populations are just different. But trying to write programs that everybody can still benefit from too, giving them enough, like whether it's volume, and then telling the soldiers, like, keeping it RPE based versus, percentage based, because we're never going to be consistent enough to probably get a percentage on you either here. So then that allows them to, you're going to get what you want out of it, to where, like, I give you, these are your numbers, this is what you're working with, this is your movement, and I'll make it more difficult for yourself based upon how you're feeling. But another thing to keep in mind is I'm getting all of my soldiers whenever they come off of shift. And it's either an 8 or a 12-hour shift. And most of the population that we work with, like, they're pretty stagnant for about 8 to 12 hours. And then end of the day. Like, that's anything but optimal. And then the only other alternative is getting them before shift. And for most of the time, unless you're getting people that go on somewhat later, that's usually about 6 a.m. and it's not any better, because then they're still working. So it sucks. So then you really have to think programming wise, okay, what am I trying to get out of this? Because I don't want to smoke them going in before work. What am I going to get out of them to increase the risk for injury coming off of work? And then they're already mad. They don't want to be there. And I've had soldiers tell me, like, I'm not mad at you, Marie. I'm just mad that I have to PT. And it's like, well, I'm like, okay, so you try not to take it personal. I think another thing is the involvement that you have as a coach. Like in the college setting, there was a lot of separation with coaching and the athletes for, the sense of professionalism. But it looks a lot different here, actually, because most of the soldiers are used to being NCO led, and their leaders are doing the PT with them as it boosts the big thing you'll hear here, morale. Katie's been saying it. I didn't know what that meant. I was like, what do you mean morale? And they're like, Coach, when are you going to join? When are you going to join? And I was like, Katie, do we do that here? And she's like, yeah. And I hop, you hop in a session and you're like, why did I write that? Like, why did I do that?
It's very humbling.
Yeah. Yeah. But then you get soldiers that come up to you afterwards and they're like, Coach, thanks for doing that with us. That was cool. It fist bumps, everything. And it really does build the trust with them, the buy-in, everything, because they can see that you're capable as a coach as well. And I didn't want it to be true, but it is. So every now and again, you got to hop in there with them. So huge difference from college to tactical.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback off of that, right? When you try to compare tactical athletes, let's just call them that, to sport athletes, you're not always comparing apples to apples. So we focus less on peak output and more on durability, right? More on movement quality, more on long-term health, right? We're not peaking athletes during the season like we normally would for sport, but our soldiers need to be ready all the time, right? Because that's how they become more deployable, especially often on little notice. You're going to go tomorrow, whether you want to or not. You agreed to it. You're going to go tomorrow, and those are things that we have to keep in mind as we prepare.
Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.